the December 13th, 2016 meeting of the City of Aiken Planning Commission. For those of you who may not have joined us in the past, I'll very briefly review our process. I'm going to ask all to please silence or mute the cell phones out of respect for whoever may be presenting to us. We will call for an application. I will then ask for those who wish to speak on behalf of the application, and then those who will speak in opposition to the application. Then any other comments may be heard. Then it will be back to the commission for a motion. When you do step up to the podium to address the commission, if you would please state your name and address for the record. All right, our first order of business is approval of the minutes of the November 15th, 2016 work session and regular meeting. Are there any changes, corrections, or additions to the minutes? Not hearing any, may I accept a motion to accept them?
So moved.
Second. Second. All right. All in favor? All right. Okay, then we will move to our first order of new business, which is application 17-20003. It's a request for annexation. The owner applicant is Hattie C. and Jerry E. McCarty. The location is 104 Recreation Drive, and the zoning request is to go to RS 15, residential single family, as part of the annexation. Is there someone who would like to speak on behalf of this application? Is there anybody who'd like to speak in opposition to the application? All right, not hearing any, then it will come back to commission for a motion.
Madam Chairman, with regard to application number 17-2003, tax parcel number 107-05-04-002, I would move that we approve the request to RS-15. It's in line with the comprehensive plan, certainly, and achieves a removal of one donut hole.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Okay, then this will be recommended with approval to City Council. Our next item is application 17-23002. It's a concept plan approval request. The applicant, Joshua Cox, Buckell Design Group, and the zoning request is planned commercial. And this is going under the title of Discount Tire Store. Is there someone who would like to speak on behalf of this application? Yes, sir. If you'll step forward.
Hey, good evening. My name's Kelly Wagoner with Buckle Design Group. Our office address is 3471 Donneville Street, Duluth, Georgia 30096. I'm here tonight just to represent Discount Tire. Available to answer any questions. We've had an opportunity to review the staff report and find it accurate, did not have any objections, and I was present and listening to the work session. A couple of questions that came up I can speak a little bit to. One was dealing with the traffic. This is kind of a step down use in the traffic world as far as traffic intensity. The traffic impact study based on this use under the engineering IT codes calls for about 200 trips a day. On average, Discount Tire gets about 98 customers a day, and usually their busiest days are on Saturdays. They're open 6 days a week, closed on Sundays, and so it really is kind of a specialty retail store. They don't do anything except sales and installations of wheels and tires. There's no oil changes or any other type of automotive repair services on that. Also heard a little bit about interconnectivity and parking. The interconnectivity, we're not opposed to interconnectivity. However, NTB being adjacent is a direct competitor of Discount Tire. And I guess our position on that is if at any point in the future to have interconnectivity through a third-party property owner, we're not opposed to that. There was also some questions with regard to the parking, which we had 49 spaces shown. Typically, a Discount Tire, I guess nationwide, they aim for about 40 parking spaces, which is what they've found to adequately provide for their operational needs. I mean, aside from that, I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. If you'll hold on just a moment. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Wagner?
Just real quick, Mr. Wagner, is it unusual for Discount Tire to go in next to a direct competitor? Are there precedents for that? And
Not all. In fact, I'm doing a very similar project in Marietta, Georgia, going through a rezoning, which is also right next to a NTB. It's very similar. I kind of classify it very similar as where you see a Lowe's and Home Depot next to each other, and they're both can be very successful. And the reason is they have different customer bases. Certain people go to Home Depot, mostly contractors in the commercial contracting world, whereas a lot of kind of residential customers tend to go more towards Lowe's. So they've been in other areas in the country adjacent to NTB. Both have been successful. And in this case, I mean, really, NTB offers additional services that a Discount Tire doesn't do. The reason Discount Tire only does, and they have in the past attempted to add things like quick service oil changes or other minor like alignments or any other kind of minor stuff. And what they have found is that, I mean, this is really their niche. As far as I know, they're the only ones in the country that only deal with wheels and tires. And they have built their brand more as a retail operation and is very customer oriented. So what they found is when they offered, at one time, when they offered those other services, they would have, one or two, three of their bays taken up for extended periods of time, and they couldn't service their other customers as quickly and as efficiently and effectively. And so they got rid of all of those. So NTB, if you're familiar with their services, they do offer other types of automotive accessories and services.
thank you.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Great, well, thank you very much. All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak on behalf of the application? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to the application? All right, not hearing any, we'll move back to commission for a motion.
Madam Chairman, with respect to application number 17-23002, concept plan for tax parcel number 122-18-05-004, located at 2286, I move that we recommend this to City Council and that in doing so, we include the provisions located on page 5. Provisions 1 through 6.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion?
Just real quick before we vote, Madam Chair, if I may.
Certainly.
I just want it known for the record, the things that we've talked about in terms of traffic and connectivity, because the city's been hit pretty hard by citizens and in the media about traffic on Whiskey Road. And this is, basically next door to something that's been controversial that we approved not too long ago. So I would just hope that for the record that the two things that have been discussed, traffic and connectivity, mitigated the concerns we have about traffic. I think that's absolutely essential that that be part of the record. Because otherwise, we're just, people can say, well, look, they're just approving something else in a congested area, and when's it going to stop? But we've gone through
Yes.
the process of determining how we can ameliorate some of these issues. And I think that's very critical to be part of the record.
True. Plus, but we did also discuss the difference between the TD business and this business, not that different as
Right.
far as traffic.
Traffic. Right. Okay, well, that'll be duly noted then. Thank you. All right. Any other discussion? Then I will call for the vote. All in favor? Okay. All right, and this will then be sent to City Council with a recommendation for approval. All right, and our last application is application, it's two combined, 17-60001 for rezoning and 17-22001 concept plan. And this does involve DuPont Landing, Second Baptist Church, CDC, and Rural Health Services, Inc. And at this time, Commissioner Matthews and myself will recuse ourselves due to the fact that we serve on those boards. And I will ask Commissioner Hunter to preside.
Okay, with regard to the application for the rezoning and concept plan, location of property, Voorhees Street and Clyburn Place, is there anybody here to speak in favor of this dual application?
Mr. Chairman, I'm Tilden Hildebrand with Hassan Hildebrand. I'm here tonight representing the parties that you mentioned previously. I have here tonight with me the owner's representative, developer's representative, Mr. Harvey Ramsur and Mr. Thomas Faulkner. Thank you, Ryan. I would like to just talk very briefly about the slide that you see up on the wall now. And then I'd like to entertain any questions that you might have related to the application. Just to give you an overview of the area. This is DuPont Drive, and I'm sure that you are all familiar with this, but right now there's a significant renovation going on at Aiken High School, and eventually the bus drive will come out onto DuPont Drive across from Bennett Avenue. Also, this is Rural Health Services here, and I understand they are in the process of rezoning this entire property here. They own actually 3 parcels here, and they have some plans for a building addition here. Part of this project involves rezoning of the access through Rural Health Services now out to Columbia Avenue, and that was required in this project, somehow related to funding and distance to amenities. This access was needed. The project involves 50 duplex units, total units, a community building, and a parking area for that community building. Stormwater will be discharged into an existing detention pond that is in the process of being deeded to the city of Aiken. There was some discussion in the work session related to what impact the traffic from this development would have on Rural Health Services, but I would point out again that there are also 2 other accesses to this property here onto Teague Street and here onto DuPont Drive. So I think the total trips per day anticipated in this development was around 300. I really don't see that having a significant impact on the traffic flow at Rural Health Services. The conditions stated or suggested conditions stated in the report are all acceptable to the developer in this case. certainly I'd like to answer any questions you might have.
Just out of curiosity, Mr. Hildebrand, what were these rent for? Just typical rent, do you know, or these will be?
The typical rent,
Yeah, these will be rental units, correct?
that's correct.
I'm just curious what they'd rent for, just kind of.
I would
Ballpark.
have to defer to Mr. Faulkner on that one.
I am not totally sure about that. The rents are restricted rents. The funding source is Section 42 tax credits. I believe it would be possibly about $450 a month.
Thanks.
The community building,
Yes, ma'am.
how much green space or outdoor activity space? Is there going to be some plan for around that building?
The green space, everything outside all of the structures is common green space. It's hard to see on that little handout, but there's well over 60% green space on the entire site. There's a gazebo here,
Right.
and there's also a playground area, I think, planned for this, but I'm not sure that it's immediately behind this. It's also interconnected with the other community building for DuPont Landing, which is here, and there's also a playground existing here. So there's a significant amount of improved open space on the site.
There will not be a garages, but there will be a parking pad. Is that correct?
That is correct. And I'm certainly glad that you mentioned that. There was a question about whether the ordinance was met as far as the requirement for off-street parking of 1.5 spaces per unit, and it's certainly in the plan that that would be provided. However, and this is a little convoluted, the ordinance requires or restricts the width of a driveway for a lot that's 30 feet or less to 12 feet, or a lot that's 30 feet or more to 18 feet. However, we're not subdividing lots. In other words, this is all common area, and these are not subdivided. However, in the interest of caution, we'd like to request a waiver on that 18 feet so that we can install 2 parking stalls for each of these units. Typically, a parking stall is 10 feet wide, so that let's call it a driveway, could be as much as 20 feet wide, which exceeds the 18 feet allowed if these lots were subdivided.
These are duplexes.
Yes.
They're duplexes.
These are duplexes.
So you're saying you want 2 parking places for each side of the duplex,
That's correct.
which would require at least a 40-foot pad.
It would require 20 feet each, and it would be separated toward the ends of the building with landscaping in between.
So you would have 4 cars parked out front,
Potentially.
essentially?
The ordinance requires 3. The
Now that's-
architect, and I'm not the architect recommended having 2 parking spaces per unit.
Well, now, the conditions that we are looking at prior to you having brought this up, or me having brought it up and you responded to it, that it comply with the parking requirements of the zoning ordinance. So you're saying it does not comply with the parking requirements of the zoning ordinance at this point?
This concept plan, although it's hard to see, has 1 parking stall at each duplex unit, 1 on each end. We would like to double that number.
But does it comply with the parking ordinance as you currently have it?
As it's shown now, no.
So do we need to, at this point, make that change?
Yes, if that were the pleasure of the commission.
We would need to add another condition.
Well, that is in the conditions, in that the parking requirements be met.
Yeah, but you're saying the condition would be that you have to comply with the parking requirements of the zoning ordinance. There's no listing of any exceptions. In other words, you want an exception to the zoning ordinance parking requirements.
That's the minimum parking required, yes.
So the zoning, the zoning ordinance only requires the 3,
It requires 3.
okay?
We would request 4, and that's really in the interest of keeping people from parking on the street.
But they would be slightly narrower. So you're going to take 40 feet.
Well,
Instead of
it could
236.
either, the ordinance allows, well, again, this is up for discussion or debate, but the ordinance allows 18 feet, and we would like to have up to 20.
See what you're saying?
Clarify, the ordinance was written in such a way, I think, that it addressed a duplex as a
As a unit.
standalone unit. This all being one parcel and part of a planned development. It may not be applicable, but for the record, it would be, it would be cleaner if we referenced the waiver of that width, just so there's no question.
If these units had garages, then we wouldn't be having this discussion. However, we would be limited in the number of units that could have garages that face the street, so we would have another issue.
Yeah.
Mr. Planning Director, what are your thoughts on that particular issue?
I think having, I think it meets the spirit of the ordinance to have just the slightly larger apron to comply with, being able to park because of limited on-street parking in particular along there, that since it's all being parked off-street, I think as a planned development,
So we would change condition number 1 to read that the development be allowed a waiver with regard to the parking requirements of the zoning order in order to,
let's see.
And Ryan, I don't know whether your ordinance specifically says, when we talk about driveway width, I don't think it specifically says a 12-foot driveway can accommodate 1 car and an 18-foot driveway can accommodate 2.
Correct.
2, and thereby you've got either 2 or 3 parking spaces if you have a garage, so I think we're just talking about a width issue rather than a number of cars parked issue.
right,
Correct.
in order to,
So we would increase the waiver would allow it to be increased to 20 feet as opposed to 18
20-foot driveway
feet.
as
Something
opposed to
along those
18
lines.
feet.
Something along
Right.
those lines.
Be a waiver of the 2 feet.
Correct.
Waiver of the 2-foot, allowing up to 2 additional feet.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Anybody, questions? Any
development.
more questions?
Be allowed a waiver.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else in favor? Is that it? In favor? How about against? Anybody here to speak against this? Okay. We have a motion.
Chair, I would recommend the motion to approve application 17-60001 for a rezoning request, and 120-14-17-001. Also encompassing application 17-22001 for the concept plan approval of DuPont Landing LLC, Second Baptist Church and Rural Health Services, Inc., with the amended possible conditions of one being adjusted to the development comply with the parking requirements of the zoning ordinance up to 20 feet, as well as 2 and 3.
Second.
Okay, discussion.
Before the vote, I don't mean to nitpick, but I think you may have used the word possible conditions in your motion. I'm wordsmithing a little bit here, but just.
With the conditions of.
Okay, good enough.
In other words, all the conditions apply with the.
1 through 3 with the adjustment.
With the
to the
adjustment.
one.
Okay. Second, we had a second, right? Any further discussion? Anybody else got it? Okay, all in favor? Raise your hand. That's unanimous.
I'll go fetch.
Yeah, tell them we're ready.
Thank you, Commissioner Hunter. All right, and I have a very simple task now. There being no further business before us, this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.